My name is Garrett, and this took place when I was a sophomore in college. When I didn't get a dorm after freshman year, I scrambled for off-campus housing. Long story short, I ended up in a co-op, part of a three-house community that was sort of near campus but not really. Plus, I had a bike, so I didn't really mind the extra travel time. There were a handful of alumni, 1 or 2 TAs, and a few older people getting their degrees later on in life. But the person who immediately stood out to me was an older woman who lived in one of the other houses. From what I could tell, she was maybe in her late 50s, even though she looked a little older than that. She had graying hair and walked with a sort of limp, like she had some kind of back injury. She was really quiet and mostly kept to herself, and she always had this blank expression on her face. I assumed she had some kind of connection to the university, maybe faculty or maybe an alumni, but no one explained and I didn't ask, which was a little weird to begin with because the 2 other houses had their own kitchen, so I wasn't sure why she'd hang out in ours. She was just standing there while the rest of us were talking and running around, making dinner and listening to music. I caught eyes with her a few times, and part of me got the feeling that she was watching me specifically, even though I knew that was unlikely. No one acknowledged her, which I thought was a little weird too. I glanced out my bedroom window, and there she was, staring up at me. It was getting late, and it was decently cold too, so she must have been freezing out there. I couldn't tell if she was looking into my window or just in the general direction of the house, but I felt like she was staring at me specifically. The moment I did, I instantly regretted it. Instead, she jumped up and down a few times, like she was excited, and then ran towards one of the other houses, presumably hers. I felt kind of sick. And even if she hadn't, she now knew which room was mine. He told me that that woman had always been there, and that I should try my best to ignore her like the rest of them did. I inquired further about her, but the guy genuinely didn't know anything, and said he was just repeating what someone had told him when he moved in. It didn't sit right with me, so I asked around until I got some semblance of an answer. One of the seniors in the specific house she lived in told me that she was associated with the university, and was a little kooky, but that she didn't have a history of violence or getting physical. I asked him why no one found that as strange as I did, and he told me that they really couldn't control who lived there, as that decision was up to the property manager. I wasn't fully satisfied with that answer, but there was nothing, so I tried to just block her out of my mind. But then it got worse. One night, I walked out of my room and nearly ran into her. She was in the hallway. I literally jumped back because she caught me so off guard. It was past midnight, on like a Tuesday, so the house was mostly dead. She didn't say anything when she saw me. Instead, she just turned and walked away, as if I were the one who had intruded on her. I'm not going to go into every little detail, but there were several more occurrences like that one where I caught her either snooping somewhere where she had no business being, or doing something she had no business doing. All 3 houses had once been part of the same hotel, so all the rooms had personal locks and keys. It was a co-op, so most people just left their doors unlocked, but I was someone who couldn't sleep comfortably knowing someone could just walk into my room, so losing my key was a big deal. Everyone had a spare, including me, but I was pissed because I'd have to go make a copy of the key, and that was an extra annoyance I couldn't afford at the time. A few nights later, I woke up randomly in the night. There was a soft bumping coming from my closet every 20 seconds or so. It sounded like something shifting behind the door, like something was moving inside of my closet. I'm not one to scare easily, and I'm definitely not one to be helpless in a dangerous situation, so I was going to deal with this myself. I quietly got out of bed and took a deep breath. I slowly walked over to the closet, trying to keep my breathing under control. In one fluid motion, I ripped the closet door open and screamed like a crazy person. Just as I expected, the woman was in there. She had one of my ties wrapped around her neck, and her eyes were wide open. She was holding a kitchen knife with her other hand. My scream must have startled her, because before I could react, she lunged at me with the knife outstretched. I screamed again, only this one wasn't pretend. It was a scream of pure fear. I wrestled her to the ground and was able to disarm her pretty easily, given how frail and small she was. That didn't make the situation any less terrifying, though. She kicked and fought and bit as I pinned her to the ground, screaming the whole time. I yelled for help, and I heard some doors slam, followed by some of my housemates running down the hall. My friend Lee immediately helped me immobilize the woman, and the 2 of us kept her pinned while someone else called the police. The rest of the night was a blur. The police got there quickly and arrested her on the spot. By that point, she had stopped screaming, but she refused to say anything either, which was extremely unsettling. The cops found my room key on her. Real big shocker there. A few weeks later, we got our answer about who she was. Apparently, she was the property manager's sister who he had been letting live there under the radar. She had severe mental health issues, and instead of getting her proper care, he had just thrown her into one of the unoccupied rooms. I believe the property manager was eventually arrested for negligence and a slew of other things, and rightfully so. I honestly blame him so much more for what happened than her. If anything, I feel bad for her, but my pity won't erase the fact that she tried to kill me. I have no idea why she seemed so interested in me specifically, but I can only hope nothing like that ever happens to me again. I'm graduating soon, and I'm definitely going to miss college, but I don't think I'll ever be able to look back on my time here without thinking about that night. This isn't really my story, but I essentially watched the whole thing happen, so I'm telling it anyway. I've lived in a modest 2-story home with my husband Benjamin for the better part of 20 years now. All of our kids are out living their own lives, and I couldn't be prouder. What I'm about to tell you happened last year. Someone had just moved into the house across the street, which was really nice because I was getting sick of looking out at a vacant house all the time. I'm retired, so I spend a lot of time on my front porch, knitting, reading, enjoying the weather with my husband, you name it. I also listen to a lot of true crime podcasts out there, and sometimes I'll just play music. The person who moved into the house across the street was a young guy, maybe mid-20s. He drove an expensive-looking BMW and always dressed in flashy clothing, so I figured he was either well off or seriously pretending. I hope I'm not giving the wrong impression about him. My first trip to the deep web was both very exciting and nerve-wracking. I'd heard all the stories, but I still didn't really know what to expect. Turns out there's a lot of dead links, as well as lots of spam, scams, and obviously drugs. So, unsatisfied, I dug a little deeper, trying to avoid all the screwed-up snuff videos, CP, and gore porn. What I did find, however, was equally as eye-opening and revealed to me how disgusting some members of the human race can be. I stumbled upon a very particular forum. It was a forum for people who are HIV positive. I clicked through to check it out, not really knowing what to expect, since this was surely something that could be discussed on the surface web. What I found was not what I expected, and in all honesty, reading their posts made me feel sick. There was a group of gay men who were HIV positive, discussing how they intentionally passed the virus on to unsuspecting victims. They went on to explain in great detail their favorite techniques on how to do so. Here is what one particularly fucked up user posted. This is really heavy stuff, and I mean it when I say it made me feel sick, so listen, at your own risk. I'm a biker, living in London, the UK, and I've discovered 3 major ways of positiving up an unsuspecting negative. The first I discovered by accident, when I was fucking a guy and the condom broke. I said I was sorry, and I was. But later on, it made me smile. Then I was doing another guy, and the condom broke when I put it on. I fucked him anyway, feeling guilty and horny as hell at the same time. Then I started pricking the rubbers in their packets, so that when I started fucking, they'd split. But this doesn't always work, so now, to be extra sure, I go to clubs with a pair of nail scissors, pick up a handful of condoms, go to the toilet, sit down, and carefully cut open the packets, remove the condoms, and snip off the tip. I then roll it back up and slide it back into the packet. Then I look for guys who are into safer sex only. I've done hundreds of guys using this method over the years. The second method is more work, but more fun. I chat up negatives online who want to go bareback with another negative. I say I tested negative 1 month ago. I think because I only go top, I've always tested negative. If they want, I tell them I'll pull out before shooting, but I never do. There's plenty of guys into getting fucked by a guy in biker leathers and a crash helmet, so I do them like that the first time. Then I get more intimate, smiling and kissing passionately. I make sure I fuck them at least 5 times. Then I stay in touch with them to see how they get on. I've done about 20 guys using this method over the years, and I've only failed once. When they tell me that they've tested positive, I say, "Oh God, how did that happen? Do you think I should get tested too?" Thank God for chat rooms, they can't see how much I'm smiling. There was sadly more to this story, and of course there were more posts like it, but it only gets more disturbing from there, and I think you get the point already. After doing some research afterwards, it seems like other people have checked out the same forum as me, and had a similar reaction. So if you want to check the rest of that post out and see how it ends, then you can do so with a simple surface web search using a term like deep web forum post and checking the images in Google search. I do recommend you don't do this, however, for your own stomach's sake. The world can be a pretty sick place sometimes. I think I need to go and watch a few cat videos or something. Hi guys, Lazy Masquerade here again. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed the video. That was a small collection of accounts of what some people have found on the deep web. And it's rather horrifying to think that all this goes on under our very noses. But there is a light at the end of this very dark tunnel, this very dark web tunnel, I should say, and that's the fact that NASA has recently confirmed that they're going to be joining a US government project to index the dark web in a style similar to Google, and that should uncover a lot of the criminality going on there. So even if not now, maybe in the future we might be rid, or at least, more rid of some of this gruesome stuff going on in the world. You can find an article about that NASA thing down in the description below, and you can also check out the artwork of Anthony Salinas via the links down there as well. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter, all that jazz, and you'll hear from me very soon. So until then, surf safely. And remember, the best things happen in the dark.